Hey, folks, thanks for coming back and joining us again on the Lincoln Project podcast. I'm your host, Rick Wilson. When you hear this episode, it will be 91 days until the election. Holy mackerel, it's going fast. So with that, I want to welcome my good friend, Molly Jong-Fast, to the podcast, and here we go.
Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Good night and good luck.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the Lincoln Project podcast. I am your host today, Rick Wilson. I am delighted to be joined by my bestie, my dear friend, Molly Jong-Fast. We are here to talk today about the amazing Harris campaign kickoff, the VP sweepstakes, and some surprising news that she and I will be sharing with you a little later on in the show. So let's start, Molly, and thank you for coming on, as always. I know with your busy schedule of being on TV from something like 4 a.m. until 2 a.m, it's sometimes a lift because I know you are the hardest working woman in show business. So
That's
what I
not
wanted to ask you about first off, I think you and I both share the sort of big optimistic view that Kamala Harris has had a pretty good launch.
So what I think is interesting is some political person was like, when she had announced, and things really fell into place that Sunday, you know, she announced an hour later, Biden endorsed. So it was like there was very little daylight. Then everyone else in the party went full in almost immediately. Obama was the last holdout. It was like 3 days. He's always been famous for endorsing a little later. So it's not out of character. A lot of people, including Donald Trump, were tweeting that perhaps this showed some kind of daylight, but it clearly didn't, because this is clearly how he does it.
At the end of the day.
Right. And and then they posted a video together. It was very sort of harmonious. I think what I was told is like the first 3 days matter the most. I'm not sure that's, it is? Okay.
Generally.
But I think the first week has been just incredible. Like the kind of energy. And I think some of it was pent up, right? People were mad at Biden, and you could see it in the polls, right? You would see people would say they were mad at him, but then you would look at the down ballot polls and you would see the Democrats were still really winning. So it made me wonder how much of that was like a protest, we're mad at him, but those people might theoretically come home or not leave the top of the ticket blank. But it doesn't matter, because as soon as the vice president jumped into the race, all of a sudden it completely changed the landscape.
It really, I mean, I none of us, frankly, have ever seen a swap like this, a hot swap like this, where all of a sudden the world flipped on its axis in one day. Everything changed in one day. I mean, you went from having the poll out this morning from having 4 in 10 Democrats were happy with Joe Biden as their choice, and now 8.5% or 8.5 out of 10 Democrats are happy with Harris as their choice. It really sort of shocked me how quickly the consolidation happened inside the party. I mean,
it was amazing. And I also think she has this thing, which is really good, because we only have 99 days left in this endless election cycle.
97. By the time people see this, 97, whatever it is.
We don't have, that what happens is she is famous, but she doesn't have the same incumbent baggage that Biden does.
Right.
So it happens to be that she sort of has the best of both worlds. I am reminded of, you'll remember that Donald Trump also had a really short election cycle, right? He was not going to be the candidate. He was not going to be the candidate. And all of a sudden he was the candidate in August, and the election was in November versus Hillary Clinton, who had been the candidate for about 25 years.
Right. And I think you're right that one of the points you just made, I think, is really interesting. The Republicans have tried really, really hard to hang Joe Biden's negatives onto Harris. And thus far, 10 days in, it is not having any traction. They're really not being able to stick things to her that people were unhappy about in the Biden administration.
One of the things that was interesting, I think, about the Biden campaign is that it's actually very good. Like, they did a very good job. And so, for example, things like passing, setting it up so that there was a border bill, that's theoretically the admin and not the campaign, but it was set up for the campaign, right? That was like a sheer, like, that was clearly like with an eye towards making Donald Trump kill it.
And today, we're recording this on Wednesday, folks. Today, we saw Harris's first ad about the border come out, and it is incredibly aggressive. It is right up on Trump's face. It is like, nope, I'm for more border patrol agents. I'm for a strong border. You're not, Donald. I mean, I think you're right. That reflects this synchrony in the campaign from the Biden era all the way to right now.
Yes, I agree. And I think that what's interesting is you can do that, Dar. It's fine. Sorry, a kid wants to do something, of course, because God forbid, I'm not doing anything. I'm just hanging out here. But what I think is interesting about that is the campaign was really focused, but they had a problem, which is they had an 81-year-old candidate.
Yep.
And while he is, I think we all owe him an enormous debt of gratitude for his incredible work.
Yep.
He was old, and so he couldn't, crisscross around the country the way a 59-year-old can. And that's just the facts and the mechanics of living on this planet. So I do think that was good. Ultimately, they were set up, and then they got this candidate with a lot of energy.
You could see the moment the air went out of Donald Trump's campaign. And it wasn't actually when Biden announced. It was at the RNC. He picks Vance, and there's muttering even among people at the RNC among the faithful. Like, I don't know if this guy's the right choice. I don't know this. Vance, has now become the worst vice presidential pick ever. I mean, for all that Dan Quayle was an F up in the campaign, they still won despite it. And so you've got this guy who is like a boat anchor around Trump now. And as Trump has every passing day since Vance was named as the VP nominee, the story gets worse. What is your take on, like, I don't think they can dump him, but man, I am hearing no end of Trump complaining about, I can't believe they talked me into this fucking guy.
Well, I think it's interesting. Clearly there was a deregulatory factor, right? Remember, Trump ran on deregulation, and when he was president, he'd be like, I'm cutting regulation. So that was something to appeal to like billionaire tech bros. And now we are in this cycle that, we'll decide AI regulation, which could be really one of the biggest boons or banes to American economy. So I think he saw a real in with these very rich Silicon Valley guys, because a lot of them are complete nihilists, have this very dystopian view of the future that involves, they don't necessarily believe in democracy. Some of these people, they believe in a sort of authoritarian monarch. Some of them believe in a monarchy.
Listen, that whole Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, JD Vance axis of the democracy is a dead ideology, and we need monarchy to return. And of course, as in all things with monarchies, they're like, well, we'd be the royalty, right? We'd be the kings and the dukes and the princes, right?
And it's also, I think he got lulled into that. Also, there's a lot of money. And remember, as much as Trump needs to raise, he needs to raise 2 or 3 multiples more.
Yep.
Because he has these ongoing legal fights. And while he's won some of them, the reason he's won is because he's been able to just shell out millions.
To spend $100 million.
Right. So I think he really does have a sort of endless, and then there are also people on the, we don't really know what the accounting looks like, but it's hard to imagine that this is going to be beyond reproach. Though none of us know.
You've got to
unlikely, right?
You've got to imagine there's a skim for the Trump,
Well,
overhead.
even the sort of very best run campaigns have dicey expenditures. So the fact that this is not, so I think there's a possibility. We just have to see the filings, but it certainly could be open to whatever. And then the other thing I think is he really doesn't have. In 2016, Trump was so energetic. I mean, he would do 5 rallies a day.
Absolutely. He'd fly from city to city and bang these things out over and over again. And now,
for hours.
I think by the time he's done with the hand job dance now, he's kind of exhausted.
he seems he doesn't have the same kind of zeal and physical, so I think it's a real problem for him. I also just don't understand what the case for him is, right? So like in 2016, he was going to bring back your coal jobs. If you're a coal miner, nobody has said that to you, right? Because it's so expensive, nobody's bringing back coal. But in 2016, he said, I'm going to bring back your coal jobs. So you could say, this guy is going to bring, but now he already was president, so he's going to make America great again.
Right, and the manufacturing boom happened under Joe Biden,
right, and is happening,
it's happening under Joe Biden. And even as you look at like what the predicates of the campaign were, I think they shot themselves in the ass on Project 2025.
Yeah,
I mean, this cleanup yesterday, or attempted cleanup, it's like nothing says Donald Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025, like firing the guy who runs Project 2025. I mean, it was insane how dumb the entire scam was from the beginning. But I mean, he's not going to escape that. And Vance isn't going to help him escape that either, because he's as wrapped into that world as possible.
Yes. I mean, that for sure. And also, I mean, he wrote the introduction to the Heritage Foundation's president's book, which is coming out in the fall.
Yay!
Like, talk about bad timing, right? We have nothing to do with anything the Heritage Foundation does, except my vice president did write the introduction to his book.
Right. And out of the 141 people that are involved in the production of Project 2025, 86 of them are former Trump administration officials or current
people
Trump
are planning
allies.
Going back.
Yeah.
And one of the pillars is training people to work in the Trump admin. I mean, they're not training people for the Harris admin.
No.
Right. The Harris administration is not like we're going. And I mean, the other thing that I think is so important about this is the stuff is so crazy. It's like, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. Like, the Department of Education, if you were in a red state with low state taxes, like the state of Florida, the Department of Education gets a ton of money from federal education. So that federal money is not going to go to Florida. So you're going to have to raise state taxes or just say, public education, we tried.
Yeah, it is. Look, it is everything in Project 2025 that got focus group tested and ad tested and message tested. I mean, we did some ourselves, and it was radioactive waste. But the most important person did it was Tony Fabrizio, Donald Trump's pollster, who took out, who they did from, I know they did a national survey on it. I know they did several swing state focus groups on it. And they came back that it was absolutely killing him. The minute people heard anything about it, they were like, no, hard pass. But we got a little far afield on that, because I want to go back to JD Vance for a second. I think the biggest unlock that Harris has as a candidate is the culture, and that she has this connection to entertainment, to Hollywood, to music, all these things that Trump, has Lee Greenwood and Kid Rock and 80s wrestlers, right? I think the weird part about this is that people have underscored that for a long time, since Obama. And now it's like the mockery of Vance has become this like cultural super machine, just absolutely wrecking this guy every day. And I want to talk about that a little bit. And then I want to talk about the big rally the vice president had last night in Atlanta, because I think that says a lot about where we're going.
So what I think is interesting about the RNC, which we both watched fucking all of, was that they doubled down on this idea that they didn't need women voters, that they really could just get their sort of radicalized
non-college bro dudes
male voters out there, and that would in fact deliver for them the Electoral College, which if you have a wildly unpopular Republican who can't turn out a Democrat, if you're running against Biden and Biden isn't going to turn out a lot of the base, maybe you can win with those numbers. But if you have a high turnout election and you have Democrats really turning out voters, the sort of Obama voters, then I think you have made a very stupid calculus.
Yeah.
So that was what we saw. We saw like Lee Greenwood. We saw Hulk Hogan. We saw these kind of hyper masculine displays of masculinity. There was shirt ripping. There were, and the idea was women are nice supporting actresses. Look, this is the girlfriend of, the husband of, the wife of, the this of.
The wags,
Right. These are wives and girlfriends and people we sleep with, but they're not really the
human.
main, right? Or they're just inanimate objects and not people who control, who should have jobs. I mean, there are some people, Sarah Sanders. I mean, there are some women who have government jobs, but largely they were supporting actresses. And then the stars were these hyper masculine, manly men. So I think the thinking there was that this would be enough to get him over the finish line. But I think now that there's a new candidate who can crisscross the country, gets young voters, people of color excited, putting Georgia back on the map. Now I think I don't know how you put that genie back in the bottle.
I don't either. I don't know how you fix it for Trump or for Vance at this point.
Right.
Because what we saw last night in Atlanta was a bigger rally than Trump's been able to have for years. She had 11,000 people stacked to the rafters in Atlanta.
Right.
For an
and
event,
they were 20,000 people showed up, right?
Yeah, with 20,000 people there, but 11,000 in the hall.
Right.
Like Trump always says, there's 50,000 people watching on screens out. It's never true, folks. The average Trump rally is a couple hundred people at a state fairground. That's a fact.
Right.
And a big Trump rally is a couple thousand people. She packed that place to the walls last night. Megan Thee Stallion opened for her. She put on
Megan Thee Stallion. You're right.
The Stallion. Sorry. She put on a terrific show. The picture was great. The lighting was great. She looked phenomenal. She looked presidential. And the whole thing told me she could go do that same event in 100 other cities. She could stack that arena just like that in North Carolina tomorrow.
Right.
She could go do that all over the country.
The thing that I feel like I would always say on television, I feel like people would always get mad at me for it, but she has become an Obama-level orator.
Yes.
She did not start there.
No.
And most people don't start there, right? I don't think that Obama was an Obama-level orator until he was. And so she has become a very good speaker, and so she's very powerful. So all these attacks on her from Trump about laughing, nobody gives a fuck. If
nobody fucking
cares.
Zero fucks are given. By the way, I'll tell you the secret of why she got good. Because she had to go and do a lot of the usual vice presidential stuff. And they started tightening her speech down from 50 minutes to 22 minutes.
Yeah.
She has a cadence. Yeah, that speech last night was 21 minutes and 8 seconds or something like that. She has a cadence now, subtracting for applause. She has a cadence now that works for her. And it flows from her naturally or organically. She's not trying to follow a bunch of White House talking points to conform. She now is talking because she's the candidate. She's the principal. And I watched last night and I was like, he's fucked.
Yeah. And I'm going to add something very boring here.
Yeah.
It's not boring, but I think it's a little controversial. And I don't want to degrade Hillary Clinton because she had a lot. She was running on Bill's baggage. It was just a totally different thing. Yeah. The Clintons were an obsession on the right.
Yep.
But one of the things when you would listen to Hillary give a speech, and I don't think she does this so much anymore, but she did it in 2016, was you felt like she was trying to speak in that way that men sometimes speak.
Yes.
She was like yelling. She was just felt loud, but not comfortable. Whereas Harris feels she is just uniquely herself, but she sounds like an Obama level orator. And you can't fake.
Nobody would have called that based on 2020. Because as I wrote one time, the funny thing about her was in 2020, there were plenty of days she would go out and be like a 125 batter. Decent, fine.
Right.
Then she'd hit a grand slam home run and you're like, why can't she flip that switch all the time?
And now she can.
You never really had that feeling with Hillary. I think you're right, though. Hillary was trying to emulate that sort of masculine rhetorical projection style.
Right.
And I think it never worked for her because
I don't know that it works for anyone.
Because it's also something that has its probably its zenith back in the Reagan era.
Yeah.
That is a different style than we have these days. But so Molly, go ahead.
Just one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
Her speech, Harris's speech in 2020, her first speech when she announced her campaign,
right,
was the speech where we knew that she could do it. Right. Where if you look back on that speech, it's a really good speech. And what happened, I think, is she just had to do so much work and so many speeches and so much sort of talking to people that she got really good at it, which you and I both know is how you get good at things.
Right. It's, people ask us, like, how do you stand and talk all the time on
right.
Because we do it all the time. It's practice. So Molly, that is a perfect segue to let our friends and families and audiences know that you and I are going on the road.
That's right. I sent the tour thing to my husband, and he's like, that's a lot of dates. And I was like, yeah.
So because Molly and I aren't busy enough,
that's right,
as it is already, we are going to be on the road throughout the end of August and up until the beginning of October. We have got tour dates in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Milwaukee, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and some other venues to follow that we will be announcing a little bit later. But it's the same show you and I did a couple months ago in New York at the City Winery.
Yes,
we sold it out. People loved it. They loved, you know, and folks, basically, it's Molly and I having this kind of conversation about what's going on in the world. People got a chance to engage with us with Q&A from the audience, and we had some special guests come in. We'll be doing that in a lot of these cities as we travel around the country. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will post information about it shortly on all of our socials. You won't be able to escape it because we are who we are. But I'm super excited about this. I'm really jazzed about this.
I think we're going to have fun. I mean, we'll definitely have lots of local talent. So people in different cities, that's not completely set up yet, but I think it'll be very fabulous. And I think that it'll be fun for us, and we want to hear from you guys too. We do a lot of audience weirdness because I love an audience weirdness.
Oh, we had so much fun with talking to folks in the Q&A, and then after we do the usual interaction with people that it's great for us to hear what people out in the world are saying and thinking. And so we're super excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun because, of course, once again, it's because neither of us just have enough to do. We're just not busy enough. So we had to do something additional with our schedules. Anyway, well, Molly, thank you for coming on today, my friend. I appreciate you as always. I will see you very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Very fun.
And folks, thank you for listening to the Lincoln Project podcast today. Since we are all servants to the algorithm, I would love it if you could like, subscribe, follow on Apple Podcasts.
Yes,
do
please.
all the things that the algorithmic gods want us to do. I'd appreciate it. It'll help us spread the word, spread the message, and get out there in this pro-democracy fight. Folks, less than 100 days to go. Let's go kick their ass. Hey, folks, if you're interested in this tour that Molly and I are doing, you can find out more at beacons.ai/politicsasunusual. That's beacons, beacons.ai/politicsasunusual. That'll have the schedule. That'll have links to the promos and the ticket stuff. And I hope you'll join us.
Good night and good luck.